and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get so wet. I'm going to get so wet.
Oh my God.
So I said, let me go. That's sun and food together.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this is our final session of our live broadcast on sustaining your child and family services organization. It's my pleasure to introduce our final trainer of the day, and that is Lynda Bowman. Lynda Bowman, Raising More Money instructor and coach, has been involved in training and education for more than 30 years in both the nonprofit world, as a teacher of learning disabled students, and also as a founder of Merex Corporation, which provides basic skills training to employees in the tech industry. In 1999, after attending a Raising More Money workshop, Lynda implemented the approach at a program she was working in called New Way Learning Academy in Scottsdale, Arizona. She was able to increase the annual donations by 40% and transform that entire organization. Her mission now is to empower other nonprofit organizations to achieve the same success that she achieved. Raising More Money is a mission-based system for raising sustainable funding from passionate and committed lifelong donors. I hope that you'll, with me, welcome Lynda Bowman.
Thanks, Jane. Sure. Well, thanks, everybody, for having me here. Thanks to AIA Resource Center and Jean and John and Kate, and I'm happy to be here. I am Lynda Bowman. I'm from Arizona, so it's really nice for me to be someplace where it's not 113 degrees. It's very pleasant. I even rode the BART. I feel so modern, like I got here on the BART. It was great. What I'm going to show you today is an overview. It's a model, a system for building what Jean said is lifelong donors. Donors who truly get it about your missions and the amazing work that you're doing. And I know the work you're doing because we have worked with many organizations who are in child abuse prevention work, domestic violence prevention work. I've worked with some CASA groups. I've worked with Head Start. We've worked with foster families, foster placement. I know what you do. It's hard work, and it's essential work. I mean, you're the ones who really are out there on the front lines doing what's hard and doing what's going to make a difference for your communities, for your families, and ultimately, I think, for this country. So what I'm going to show you today is a whole system for building lifelong donors. It's really designed to be a bridge strategy to take you out of the old way of fundraising, which was basically events, doing events and galas and things like that, into the new world of major gifts. Now, having said that, it's not supposed to replace anything you're doing. So, how many times have you come to some sort of training and then somebody stands up and says, everything you were doing is wrong and you should get rid of all of that. So I'm not saying that. Everything you're doing is right. You should keep doing it. But this is about a system. Really a system. We think fundraising is not about a charismatic person. Like when Sue was with us, we raised all this money, then she left. We really think it's about having a passion and a system, and that's what we're providing here. I'm assuming a lot of this is going to sound familiar to you. How many of you actually are involved with you've got to raise the money? You worry about the money, you've got to raise the money. Okay, so you've been doing this for a while, and so you're going to recognize a lot of things you're already doing. You should keep doing them, but we just put them in a systematic approach. The other reason this is going to sound familiar to all of you, I assume, is because all of us give. I mean, we all give, right? All of us give time or talent or stuff or money. And how many of you, when you've given a gift, you got the right thank you phone call or the right little note, or you got something where you were acknowledged? How many of you had that experience? Yeah. And that felt nice, didn't it? How many of you had the flip side experience where when you gave, you were ignored? Anybody have that? So how did that work for you? The odds are you didn't keep giving, did you?
Yeah, I didn't really remember.
You didn't really remember. You sort of forgot about them.
Yeah.
So you know what? This isn't rocket science, what I'm going to show you. In our heart of hearts, we all know how we should be treating our donors because it's exactly the way we would want to be treated. This whole model was started by our founder, Terry Axelrod. The company's based in Seattle. And it was based on her experience about 10 years ago at a school, low-income school for mostly African-American kids that was very poor before she implemented this model. And after 2 years at the school and using this exact system that I'm going to show you today, they raised over $7.5 million. And when she left the school, she left them with pledged money of $800,000 every year. So $800,000, $800,000, $800,000 of unrestricted operating money. Now, you all know what that is, right? That's the good stuff, right? That's what we're going for, unrestricted operating. So it works for all kinds of organizations, arts to advocacy. We've worked with a lot of groups like the kinds of missions that you have. It's a very robust model. I actually, as Jean said, I did implement this at a school. So you're going to hear school again. So some of you may be thinking, well, we don't have those cute kids like that. Ours are different. So, you know, this works for all kinds of organizations. We've trained hundreds of organizations where they don't have to have the cute kids from the school. And it's really about getting your mission out there in a powerful way. But I implemented this at a school in Arizona, as Jean said. And the first year we put this model into place, we raised $497,000 in 1 hour at an event that I'm going to show you about. This very special kind of a formula event. And the second year we raised over $800,000. But I have to tell you, it isn't about the money. I mean, we all sort of pay attention to the money, don't we, in the nonprofit world, because we worry about it so much. But really, my little organization, we don't suffer about money anymore. We have like a who's who on our board. We never even had a board before. We have technology alliances, research alliances. We did a capital campaign. We have a fully funded endowment. And before I left them, because now I'm on airplanes and BARTs riding around teaching people this because I love this model so much, but before I left that little school, we implemented a 401k retirement plan for 30 teachers who for 35 years had no retirement. So I could leave them. And I hope that you see that you could do this too. Because I sat in a room just like this and I watched somebody talking about this and the light bulb sort of went off and I thought, I can do that. You know, I can do this. So let me start with some basic statistics. And I'm assuming most of you know these statistics, but just bear with me if it's a review. So the total dollar amount of money that's given to all nonprofits, now this is all of them, health and human services, faith-based, the arts, education, etc., $248 billion with a B dollars. It's a lot of money. Then look at who gives what. 5% comes from corporations, 11% comes from foundations, which means 84% of $248 billion comes from individuals. And I have to say this, since we're based in Seattle, this isn't all Bill Gates. It isn't. It's all of us collectively who give. Now, look over here on the right side. Do you know where your money comes from? This isn't meant to be some kind of pop quiz, but do you know? I mean, in our organization, we were almost the opposite of this. Most of our money came from somebody, me, writing grant after grant after grant, receiving rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter. So we were just the opposite of this until I implemented this model. Now, I'm not suggesting you should stop going after corporate and foundation money. Not at all. Because if you're being successfully funded by corporations and foundations, it means you're doing exactly the same things right that you should be doing with individuals. So think about it for a minute. Individuals are a great long-term investment. Number one, we all give, yes? Number two, we're fairly loyal. How many of you have been giving to the same places year after year after year? I mean, I give to my little school because I just love their mission. I've been giving like 25 years. Number three, theoretically, as our kids grow up and go off to college, you know, theoretically we have more money to give away. I hear they eventually do leave. You know, it hasn't happened to me yet, but I hear they go. And then finally, in the end, unlike corporate and foundations who can only give away the interest, what do we have to do? We've got to give it all away. So who are we going to give it to? We could give it to the government. I'm not so sure these days. We could give it to our children and grandchildren, yes. Or we can give it to our favorite nonprofit, that default charity that we've been giving to all year after year. And yet it's interesting to me because I go around and I talk to a lot of people about raising money from individuals. Most people think that to be good at raising money from individuals, you have to have been born with some weird genetic trait. You know, it's like you sort of like to schmooze around with people or play golf or any of those things. And we say it's nothing like that. Raising money from individuals is 90% science and 10% art. In other words, you can be taught. We've taught some of the shyest people you would think would never be good at this, and they've been incredibly successful. Because we basically believe, here's our philosophy, you've got to have two things to be good at raising money from individuals. Number one, you've got to have passion for your mission. Now, nobody can give you that, but I'm assuming that for you all to be here, you know, and here we are in lovely Berkeley where we could be doing a lot of other things, but we're here learning about fundraising, you've got passion. The second thing you have to have is a system. A system. Similar to the systems that you have on the program side of what you do. I'm assuming you have systems in place, right, for the program work that you do. And yet on the fundraising side, we're incredibly haphazard. The closest thing we have to a system is a smattering of direct mail and grant writing and special events. And if we need to raise more money, what do we typically do? Let's have another event. So we're vulnerable to whatever is the latest, greatest kind of kooky idea for fundraising that comes along. So what I'm going to show you today is a model for building a system of lifelong individual donors. Donors who truly believe in what you're doing, and they're giving to you not because you've strong-armed them or manipulated them or tricked them or entertained them in any way, but because they actually believe that it's possible to partner with you to accomplish something amazing. Now I'm going to be presumptuous and just assume you're going to like it. Most people do, but So what? I mean, it's nice if you like it, but you're going to go back to work. I mean, you're going to go back to reality tomorrow or Monday, and you're going to be faced with reality, which is like your desk and all the work that's piled up since you've been gone, and that grant application that was due, it's not done. The elves didn't do it, so you're going to be faced with reality, and all of this will sort of fade into the background of like, well, that was interesting that afternoon. So what would it take for you to actually see this and make a decision that you're going to do it? You see, that's what I'm interested in. I'm really interested in you seeing this, getting it, and going back and doing it for your organization. So usually, for us to do something that's new, that's sort of we haven't done before, that's kind of a little scary, there has to be a payoff. There has to be something we'd want so badly, or else why would we go through all the work? So here's a question for you. What is the legacy you'd like to leave behind in your organization? Now, I'm not suggesting any of you leave. I'm not. But what if you were to think like, this is my last year? What do you want to leave them with? For some of you, maybe you want to leave them with a system that raises money year after year after year from people who really believe. How many of you would like that? Like, oh, a system would be good. Yeah. You see, you could stop suffering about the money if you have a system. The woman who took over after me, she doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. She just works the system. And she's gone on to raise more money than I ever did at that organization, and we don't suffer about the money anymore. Now, I just want to say something about the suffering in the nonprofit world. If we're honest with ourselves, we have this almost weird attachment to the suffering in the nonprofit world. Now, you're sort of laughing, but you know I'm telling the truth. We carry the heavy load of the suffering around, and it's like there's never enough. It's scarcity. We can't do this, we can't do that. And then finally, when we get so tired of suffering, we put down our pile of suffering and we say, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go to someplace much better. So we go to a new place to work, and what's waiting for us over there?
More suffering.
Somebody else's pile of suffering that they left behind, right? And you're thinking, oh, here, I get it again. Plus, we live on this treadmill. You all know what I'm talking about. This annual, exhausting, hand-to-mouth existence, where every year we're chasing after a certain dollar amount, right? You all know what your number is, right, that you have to raise, and I'm assuming most of you are good, so you raise the money. That's the good news. What's the bad news? What do you have to do next year?
Same thing.
Same thing, but don't they want you to raise more?
More. Right.
Yeah. So get a sense of how depressing this is. There's this whole suffering thing. There's scarcity. It's like, in fact, there's a very funny thing on our website. Later on, I'll tell you how to get to our website. It's full of all sorts of great free resources. But one thing on our website that really is sort of funny but kind of sad at the same time is what we call a suffering survey. You can go take a survey and see how much are you suffering about the money. So this is a model that's going to show you how to end the suffering about the money. You see, I really believe none of you should be waking up at night worrying about the money at all. If anything, you're going to stay awake at night worrying about how many more children's lives can we change? How many more families can we bring together? How many more programs and services can we make so that our community is changing? That's what you should be worrying about, not the money. All right, so is everybody ready to see how this works? Okay. You should all have a handout that looks like this. Does everybody have one of these? Now, notice down at the bottom, I mentioned the website, and I'll say a little more later about resources, but we have a lot of great free resources on our website. So there is a free newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks that if you like this, there's all sorts of articles and tips and strategies. It's all free. There's a PowerPoint presentation that's available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So if you get all excited about this, but you know others need to learn it, it's all there. We do conferences and we do conference calls. There's all sorts of free stuff. And I know you don't even know what this is yet, but if you like it, just know there's free resources available to you. Okay, and then if you would hold your questions, because what I want to do is get through a lot of this content, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So hold your questions, write them down, and then let's all make sure our cell phones are turned off. I already checked mine. I'm usually the worst offender, so no cell phones. All right, what do you notice when you look at this in terms of the shape of this model? What do you notice?
Circular.
It's a circle. Now, I don't know about you, but I was never trained on the circle thing in fundraising. I was trained on the triangle thing. These are all very technical terms, as you can tell. The triangle thing is where a person comes to your organization with a little gift, bigger gift, and ultimately, and often on their deathbed, there's that ultimate gift, right? There's nothing wrong with this. It's fine. It's just that in the new economy, in the new reality, there's more and more people who have the capacity and the desire to give you more money when they're younger. So go back to the circle. Think about an old-fashioned electric train. Kid on a holiday morning or birthday. How many of you had an old-fashioned train? I didn't have one, but my brother had one. I really liked his. And I just would like to watch it go round and round. And you get to be like a kid again. And you get to watch your donors get on this train track with your organization, and they go round and round for a lifetime. And you never get tired of watching it. Now, where they start the relationship with your organization is at step number 1 at what we call in our model a point of entry event, a POE for short. What is it? It's a 1-hour sizzling introductory event about your organization and your organization's mission. You don't ask for any money at the point of entry. The purpose is to educate and inspire people about your work. It should take their breath away. Now, if you can do a tour is a good thing. But if you have issues with confidentiality, or if you have like boring office syndrome or very small office syndrome, then you don't have to do a tour. You can have a dessert gathering in somebody's home. You can have a meeting in a board member's office. But if you can do a tour, even if it's in a very small place, a tour is the best thing. Now, to qualify in our recipe, because this is all like a recipe, you have to have 3 ingredients to make this an effective point of entry. So the first ingredient is you give people the facts about your organization, but only at the 101 level. Answers to the questions they always have. Jargon-free and not too much information. All right, so you don't want to give them too much information. This is very broad brush. I say this is the People magazine version of what you do. You know, so people really understand it. The second ingredient of a point of entry is we want to give people an emotional hook that they will never forget. Now, I know that sounds kind of crass, but here's the thing. As human beings, we're emotional donors looking for rational reasons to justify our basically emotional decision to give money. So if all you give me are facts and statistics, number of people served, etc., I'm going to go, very impressive statistics, and I hope somebody else other than me gives you a lot of money. Because the facts alone aren't enough to move me to want to give. But conversely, if you give me too much emotion, you know, like testimonials or thank you letters or whatever, and I move to tears, like, you know, pass the Kleenex, but I'm thinking in the back of my mind, does anybody here know what they're doing with the money? Do they have a plan? So you want to artfully intertwine both the facts and the emotions so that both people's hearts and their heads are engaged. So when they leave your point of entry, even after 1 hour, they should be leaving there saying, this is amazing. I had no idea you did all this great work. The third ingredient at a point of entry, if we're going to go round and round with people for a lifetime, we want to know who they are, so we capture their names. And in our model, we say, do it with permission. No more of this tricking people. No more of this, oh, put your business card in the fishbowl for the drawing. You know, we all knew what we were doing with this. So this model is permission-based. We invite people to come to a point of entry. We just say what it is. It's a 1-hour informational thing. It's not a fundraiser. Please come, and when you come, we're going to ask you to sign in because we want to follow up with you and get your feedback and advice about the process. Does everybody see how natural that is? All right, so let me talk you through just a sample point of entry just so you get a sense of what it is. And first of all, don't call it a point of entry. That would sound kind of weird. You want to think of a clever name. So Girl Scouts calls it Girl Scouts Now more than ever. We work with CASA, and CASA calls it CASA Cares, which I think is great. We work with another organization where they have real issues with confidentiality, and they couldn't even do a tour there, but they did it at another remote location, and they called their point of entry If These Walls Could Talk, which was really great. Good, huh? So you come to the point of entry, and you sign in, and then you're welcomed by usually a board member, and then the official point of entry will start with typically just somebody saying, you know, I'm on the board of this organization, here's why I love this organization. And then the other official part, the next on the agenda, is what we call the visionary leader. Now, the visionary leader is typically your executive director or CEO, senior staff person, and they do the visionary leader talk, which in our recipe is 5 to 7 minutes, past, present, and future, creating a sense of the gap. You know what the gap is? It's the difference between here's where we are now, which is great, and here's where we're going, which is really going to have a lot of impact. Then you will give people some emotion by telling them having a testimonial, either a live testimonial or an audio tape testimonial. You'll answer some questions. And then if you can do a tour really is great. Even if you're showing people just like offices where people are working, but you can just say, you know, sometimes we get phone calls, and this is where we're always here 24 hours a day to answer those phone calls, and we want to make sure there's always somebody here. Then you want to end your POE with a powerful live testimonial. Now, it doesn't have to be a person receiving your services. It could be a staff person. It could be a program person. In fact, one of the best live testimonials I ever heard, it was a group that was working in domestic violence, and they had a police officer who at the very end, this great big burly cop, you know, he was like 6 feet tall with his uniform on, and he stood and he talked about what was it like when he went out to answer a domestic violence call. What was that like for him? It was really powerful. All right, so people should leave your point of entry saying, this is amazing. I didn't know you even did this. You know, I've got some ideas for you, but you said it was an hour. I've got to go. And so we say, fine, no problem. I'm happy to give you a call, which leads right to step number 2 in our model. the one-on-one follow-up call with every person who comes to the point of entry within 3 to 5 days of the point of entry. You're calling people. Now, the purpose of the follow-up call is not just a polite thank you, in which case we could send them a note. This is the start of a dialogue, potentially a lifelong relationship. And think about what a lifelong relationship takes. It takes talking and listening, both sides of the equation, and this is the start of that. And wouldn't you know, we have a very specific recipe for the follow-up call. So here's how it goes. Number 1, thank you for coming. Now really, in this day and age, for people to take time from their busy lives to come learn about something new, it's like almost a miracle they show up. So you really mean it. Thank you for coming. Number 2, what did you think? What did you think about the programs? What did you think about the services? What did you think about the weather? My job is just to get you talking so I can listen to hear if there's anything in our mission, the mission of our organization, that resonates with you. Number 3, for some of us this is the most difficult step. Be quiet and listen. Listen to what they tell you, move them. Listen to what they have questions about. Listen to what they want to know more about. Take good notes. If you adopt this model, you will have to have a data tracking system eventually, because you'll have a lot of information, which is the good news. Number 4, if they haven't already told you, is there any way you could see yourself becoming involved with us? Now this is really open-ended, any way. This is not would you like to drive the van or come and tutor the kids. It's like totally open-ended. And then finally, number 5, is there anyone else that you can think of that we ought to be inviting to our fill in the clever name tour? Now, I don't want to mislead you. I don't want you to think that every person who comes to your point of entry is going to fall in love with your mission. As fabulous as your work is, and we all know you're doing amazing work, for everybody it's not going to be their thing. I'll give you an example. There was a man who came to my organization, which is a school, and he really got it. I mean, I could see he was really quite moved, so I was kind of surprised when I called him like 3 days later, and the first words out of his mouth were, "I'm not going to give you any money." I said, "Well, I'm not calling you for money because we don't ask for money on the follow-up call." He said, "Well, I'm going to tell you I'm not going to give you any money." I said, "Okay, I bet you will." He said, "I liked your school, but, you know, I don't believe in private education. Our school is private. I believe in the public schools. I think they're getting the job done, and in fact, that's where I put my time and talent. I'm on the local school district board." Well, I said, here's what I said to him. I said, "What a gift you must be to them. I hope they appreciate you." Well, there was dead silence on the other end of the phone. He didn't know what to do with that. You see, he was waiting for me to argue with him, to try to convince him that he should be with me. You know, in our model, we have a saying. We say, people who clearly tell you, as fabulous as your mission is, it's not my thing, here's what you have to learn to do. Bless and release them. No kidding. Let them go. You see, you're on a fishing expedition for people who really, they're resonating with your mission. The rest of them, you just let them go. So I let him off the hook. And, you know, in this day and age, it's so surprising. People don't know what to do with that. But I went right on to question number 5, because I'm trained in this. So I said, "Okay, I got it. You're not into my school. Maybe you know somebody." Well, you'll never believe what he said. He said, "Oh, yeah, absolutely, I do. As soon as I drove up there, you have to call my wife." And I said, "Okay, and how do I go about contacting her?" I said, "You see, that way, when the contact was made, it was a word-of-mouth referral. It was not a cold call." You see, we're ending cold calling in this model. How many of you have been given the list of the rich zip codes, and you're supposed to call these people like you really know them and ask them for money? It's so awkward. In our model, all you do is word-of-mouth referrals, which means you've got to have a great point of entry. It can't just be nice. It has to be sizzling, because otherwise people aren't going to refer their friends to something that's sort of mediocre. I mean, you wouldn't. So it's got to be really sizzling. All right, where we're going with this, let me keep myself organized. Where we're going with this is to step number 3, where we finally do ask for money. You see, since this is called raising more money, eventually we do have to ask. Now notice, we don't ask for any money at the point of entry. We don't ask for any money on the follow-up call. In our model, we have a very simple saying: only ask the people who want to say yes. What a concept. Only ask the people who want to say yes. But here's the thing. For you to know that they want to say yes, you have to know them pretty well, don't you? So we say you have to spend enough time with them so that you know that they're absolutely ready to say yes when you ask them. We say it's a lot like picking fruit. How many of you have picked fruit? So you know there's like a timing thing with fruit. If you go to like pick it when it's like green and it's like hard, you have to sort of tug at it. But you know, in the old reality of fundraising, this is exactly where we were asking for the money. When the fruit's not ripe, we'd sort of say, "Hi, my name's Lynda Bowman. I know a great organization. Get out your checkbook." We called it strong-arming the Rolodex. And it worked back then, but we don't want to do it anymore. By the time the fruit is ripe, it should just fall off in your hand. It should be no more than nudging the inevitable. But what happens to fruit if you let it sit too long? It spoils, or somebody else picks it up. So there's a right time to pick the fruit. There's a right time to ask for the money. And in our model, everything between step number 2, the follow-up, and step number 3, where you finally do ask, is what we call the cultivation superhighway. It's totally corny. The cultivation superhighway, where you hasten the ripening of the fruit. And what hastens the ripening of the fruit are contacts with people. And you all know this. The research is specific enough to say the more contacts you have, the more money you're likely to get when you finally do ask, right? So 5 contacts more than 4, 4 contacts more than 3, like that. So what would be a contact? If you send somebody an invitation to a fundraiser, would that be a contact? Yeah. If you send them your newsletter, would that be a contact? Yeah. But I think some of you can start to see this. In our model, we say the best contacts are one-on-one based on what they told you they were interested in the follow-up call. You see how this works? This isn't about your agenda anymore. It's about what they're interested in. So I want to tell you a story that really illustrates how easy and how natural cultivation is. And this is a story about a woman we call the ballet lady. So this woman came to the very original school in Seattle where Terry Axelrod started this model 10 years ago. Now, I've got to give you sort of a context for the school, just so you sort of get it. When I say this school was poor, it was so poor, they didn't even have classrooms. They had the kids in portables. Do you all know what portables are? Mm-hmm. Only these were bad portables. These had like holes in the ceiling and buckets capturing the rainwater. There was not enough money to have a complete classroom set of books, so the kids always shared. I mean, amazing learning went on, but they were like sharing books, and the kids had on clean but clearly donated and recycled clothes. So you sort of get the picture here. So this woman comes on the point of entry, and we did the follow-up 3 days later, and when we called her, she was all excited. She said, "Oh, I already know what I want to do. I'm on the board of the ballet. We have this fabulous program where we bring the ballet into schools. I'd like to be the matchmaker between the ballet and your school. What do you think?" Well, you have to know we were thinking to ourselves, the ballet lady? Are you kidding? The ballet is like several orbits out from our reality. Did you not even come on the same tour? Where were you? But we didn't say any of this to this woman because we knew that for her this ballet thing in her mind would be her volunteer project. And we, like you, know the statistics about volunteering. 90% of the people who volunteer give money, right? Volunteering kind of people or giving kind of people. It doesn't necessarily mean they give where they volunteer. It just means money will typically follow involvement. So knowing that for this woman, in her mind, this would be her volunteer thing, we didn't want to lose her. We said just what you all would have said to her. We said, ballet, that would be fabulous. I can just picture these kids dancing. They'd be some of your best dancers. However, according to what the teachers say to us, there's a few more basic needs that would have to be met before we can do ballet. Well, the next word out of her mouth was the most important lesson we ever learned, because she said, like what? You see, we had neglected to make crystal clear what our needs were. If you don't get your needs into your point of entry in a powerful way, people think you're handled. And they're going someplace that looks more needy than you. Yes. So thanks to the feedback of this woman and many others, we totally refined this tour. We parboiled it down to its emotional essence, so it delivered a walloping, predictable punch every single time. That's how good your POE has to be. We have a whole book. In fact, I brought a set if anybody wants to buy them. We have a whole book called the Point of Entry Handbook that tells you how to build what I call a knock your socks off point of entry. It's got to be that great. All right, so back to the ballet lady. When we told her what we needed, she was a very smart woman. I mean, we never could have dreamed up anybody as fabulous as this woman. And so she said, well, let me see what I can do. Maybe I can help you. I know a few people. So she started making phone calls, and she called her friend who owns the big shoe store in Seattle. You would all know this shoe store. And she invited him out for the point of entry. We did the follow-up. And when we called him, he said, I'm just amazed. He said, I never even knew that school was there. I've lived in Seattle all my life. I live 2 miles away. I didn't even know that school existed. I'm going to donate on behalf of my store a pair of the hottest, coolest sports shoes to every kid at the start of every school year. Now, do you know what I mean by sports shoes? In my day, we called them sneakers. Now they're like these big boats. My son has them, and they're like these huge big things, and they're very expensive. So then she calls, the ballet lady, calls her friend who owns like the Walmart office supply kind of store, invites him to a point of entry. When we did the follow-up, he said, I'm so inspired. I'm going to donate on behalf of my store and my employees a backpack to every student at the start of every school year, and I'm going to put in it the hottest, coolest pair of jeans, and I'm going to put in school supplies, paper, pencils, crayons. So, I've had a lot of successes in my career, but I'll tell you, the biggest successful day I thought in my career was the day the backpacks came. I'll never forget. There were the kids going, we've got backpacks. And the teachers were in heaven because now they had school supplies that they didn't have to purchase with their own money. Then the ballet lady, she keeps calling. She calls her friend who owns the Hong Kong manufacturing company. You know, like we all know people like that, but she did know somebody like that. She invited him out to the school, and he said, cute uniforms. The kids wore uniforms. Give me one in every size and style. I'm going to send them to Hong Kong and have them manufactured and donate them to every student at the start of every school year. Then finally, she calls the people on the professional sports team, the tall people. You know who I mean. Those people. And they came out and they said, you've got to be kidding. You've got these kids cooped up in rainy old Seattle all day, and they don't have any PE program. We're going to change all that. We're going to build a totally covered outdoor play area. We're going to stock it with balls and hoops and all the PE stuff, and we're going to pay for and put in a licensed PE teacher, and we're going to pay for it every single year. Now, this is all thanks to this one woman who now, 5 months later, is thinking to herself, why hasn't anybody asked me for any money? You see, this is how cultivation worked. This woman has basically cultivated herself.
Right.
She's about as ripened fruit. In fact, by the time we finally did get around to asking her for money, it was funny because she said, well, it took you long enough, and you're not asking me for enough. I know what you need, and I'm giving you more. You see, cultivation should be very natural. I mean, keep what you're doing with your wonderful volunteers, but kind of loosen up your definition a little bit. Let them sort of, ooze over your current boundaries, because then you'll find if people are doing, I mean, when this woman was out and about in the community in Seattle, and people were saying, what are you doing these days, dear? She was talking about this organization like it was her most cherished volunteer work. This is the new volunteer. They sort of write their own job description. But the point here is, cultivate people in the way they want to be cultivated. Take good care of them, and it's very natural then that volunteer will become donor right in your own organization. And just to finish the story, because there's a very happy ending here, in about a year, we did have ballet at the school, and the kids were, and they still are, some of the best dancers. And we had many, many more programs that came to this organization because volunteers showed up and we paid attention and took good care of them. And you all have the possibility for ballet ladies and ballet men in your world. They're all out there. They're just waiting for you to bring them in. All right, so now I want to talk about asking. Asking, which is step number 3. Now, there's 2 ways you can ask. Either one-on-one, which is great, or at an event. Now, regardless of how you ask people for money, either one-on-one or at an event, in our recipe, there's always 2 ingredients that you must have when you ask people for money. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to fast forward and describe this event to you, that we're sort of known for this very formulaic kind of event. And then I'm going to come back and tell you what the 2 ingredients are. Okay, is everybody clear where I'm going here? Now let me just say, this event, following a very specific recipe, has raised over $1.5 million year after year after year. And again, if you adopt this model, you don't have to ever have this event. But if the fruit's ripe, if you've cultivated it, you have to ask eventually. So you might ask one-on-one. So I figure, how many of you do events? Do most of you do some kind of events? Okay, so you might get some good tips in hearing this one. So let me just say that the first time this event was ever held in Seattle, at the school in Seattle, here's how we did it. We had kept track. And again, data tracking, you've got to keep track because you'll have a lot of data. We had kept track of everybody who came to a point of entry, and we made a list of the 100 most passionate people who'd come to a point of entry. Now notice what I said there, 100 most passionate people. I didn't say the 100 wealthiest people. I didn't say the 100 people who knew everybody in town. No, these were the people who were absolutely nuts about our school. That when we called them, they said, I can't believe what a great place that is. So we picked up the phone and we called each one of these 100 people and we said, would you be willing to be a table captain at a free 1-hour fundraising breakfast? Most of them said, what? We said, that's right, totally free. Free to you, free to your friends. You have to say free a bunch of times. Nobody believes you. Breakfast, yes. A lovely breakfast can be served. You can do this also as a lunch. 1 hour, we promise you. You and your friends, 60 minutes, in and out of there. Fundraiser, yes. Be sure to tell your friends when you invite them. This is a fundraiser. However, there's no minimum and there's no maximum gift. As much as anything, it'll be our job to hopefully inspire people so that they want to give, but you know what? They don't have to. Now, what does that mean? Because some of you are thinking you must have been tricking people. What does it mean? What's no maximum? It's my favorite category. They could write a huge check. What's no minimum mean?
Any amount will be.
Or nothing. Zero. Nada. Now, we really meant it. When we ran the financial projections to do this event, let me tell you how we did it the very first time. We wanted to have a big event because there was a huge operating deficit at the school. So we thought we'll just be honest with people and tell them and have a lot of people. So we wanted to have this event with 1,000 people. Now, don't be put off by these big numbers. We strongly recommend when you first adopt this, if you come, we have a full 2-day training and we teach you how to do this whole thing. And if you come to that training, we strongly say don't start with a 1,000-person ask event. It's crazy. But you can start with a smaller number, and if you follow the recipe, your numbers proportionally will come out. But here's how we ran the financial projections the first time. We figured if we had 1,000 people in the room, half of them, 500, would be like the ballet lady. They would have come to the points of entry, they'd be ripened fruit, they'd be ready to give. We figured the other half would be clueless. They were only coming out of guilt and obligation to their friend, the table captain. You see, guilt and obligation is an okay reason to get you to come to something, but it's not a very good reason for you to give. So let me describe this event to you. And as I describe it, put yourself in the role of a person who's coming to this thing only because your friends invited you. You have no clue what it's about. It's in Seattle, and it's 7:15 in the morning because the event starts at 7:30, and it's raining, of course, because it always rains up there. And as you drive along in your car, you know how you have this whole conversation with yourself, you know, when you're doing something you don't want to do, and you say, why am I going to this thing? I don't really want to go. You know, they said it'd be an hour. I know how these things go. I'm going to be late for work. They said I don't have to give any money. I'm sure they're going to guilt me into something. What was the mission here? Inner city education? It's not even a mission I like. I don't even have kids. But you keep driving because your friend, the table captain, called you yesterday to remind you to come. You see, it's all part of the recipe. So as you pull up at the lovely downtown hotel, there at the front door are two students from the school. Two little girls, little girl, big girl, plaid uniforms, braided hair, big smiles, going, good morning, thank you for coming, go right this way. So you go inside and you're thinking, yeah, they said there'd be some kids here. And then at the base of the escalator, there's two boy students, and they've got the blazers and the ties and the great handshake, good eye contact. Now, you don't have to have kids to do this. You can have smiling volunteers doing the same thing, but the point is you make a human connection. Eye contact, a handshake, something that sort of says to people, we're like humans here and we really care about something. As you go up the escalator, in the distance, you hear the sound of a children's choir belting out an inspirational song. And you can't help but think, what is all this? You know, what time did these kids get up to look so cute? When you get upstairs at the registration table, you get your name tag and you go into the ballroom that's been, you know, set with a heavy cold breakfast, and you find your friend the table captain and you bond with your friend the table captain and you sit down. You know, you've got your coffee, you've got your bagel, you settle into your little cozy nest. At the stroke of 7:30, this event starts right on time, even though 60% of the people aren't even in the room, but it starts on time with walkie-talkies and timers all behind the scenes. And we start with the perfunctory welcome and thank yous. So this is typically just a board member who says, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you table captains for making the day happen. Like thank you board members, like a big thank you like that. Then next on the program is our first emotional hook. Remember the emotional hook from the point of entry? Well, this is just a little 3-minute something that basically says to people, we're not just here for breakfast. So at the school, we had an invocation with the pastor and a child. You can have somebody sing a song, you can have somebody read a poem, somebody can read a testimonial letter, so it doesn't have to have, you don't have to have children in it at all, or you could. Then we say to people, enjoy your breakfast, we're going to be back in 10 minutes to start the program. You've got to give people downtime to eat because, like, there's the food and they're hungry. And plus, they feel weird if they don't socialize with people at their table. But even while they're eating, we still maximize the time. So we do two things. First of all, at every place setting, there's just a little card, and we had the kids from the school just write, you know, little things that kids would write. My best friend, my favorite teacher, our classroom pet, what I'm going to be when I grow up. And each place setting had a different one. So everybody could take those home as little souvenirs from the day. And then the second thing that happens is, as you're sitting there eating your breakfast, you get a little tap on the shoulder, and you turn and you look, and there's a student from the school going around with a basket of apples, making eye contact with every person and saying, thank you for coming to our breakfast. Would you like an apple? Now, you don't have to have kids. You can have volunteers going around. We work with one organization who works with the homebound elderly, and what they do is they have their volunteers go around and they pass out holiday greeting cards and pens, and they say, please take a moment to write a card to our homebound elderly. It may be the only card they get all year, like that. So you really want people to sort of get in touch with your mission in a powerful way. All right, 10 minutes is up. Up steps the visionary leader. Remember the visionary leader from the point of entry? This is sort of the same thing, only this is the sort of oomphed up version. It's a bigger speech, and we rehearse the visionary leader. So as part of, if you come to our full 2-day training, you receive 3 hours of follow-up coaching from a Raising More Money coach, somebody like me who knows every aspect of this, and you can use it for up to 1 year. And we rehearse the visionary leader on the phone. I mean, we leave nothing to chance. Then the visionary leader, after his or her speech, introduces the 7-minute video, which must move people to tears 3 times. 7 minutes, 3 times. It's all part of the recipe. Now, we don't want people crying tears of depression and sadness. That would be really mean to do to a room full of people. But they've got to be moved. So they can be crying tears of joy, hope, inspiration, even laughter. Then, as the lights come up from the video, there stands in the front a testimonial person. A person whose life has been changed by your work. Now at the school, again, we had the kids. So we just had a few kids in the front and we interviewed them. We just asked them some questions. So the first question we asked them was, what do you like about the school? And they said, oh, I love the hugs I get every morning. I love the hot breakfast. For many of the kids, it was their only hot meal. I love playing with my friends on the playground. Many of these kids lived in neighborhoods where they couldn't play outside because they were in danger of a drive-by shooting. Second question, what's your favorite subject? Now, you know how kids are. So these kids were saying, I love science, I love math, I love reading. You know, I have a 12-year-old, and I really am afraid that if you asked him, he'd say, I like recess and lunch. You know, but these kids were like proud of their academic accomplishments. And then the third question, and this is where the audience melts, we asked the kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now you got to picture this. Here's this huge ballroom, you know, in this big hotel, and here's these little kids standing in the front on risers so you could see them because they're short people. And they're standing there saying in their proudest voices, I'm going to be a scientist. I'm going to be a school teacher. I'm going to be the first person in my family to graduate from high school and go on to college. Now in that moment, whether or not you've ever heard of this place, whether or not you even believe in this mission, everybody in the audience is moved. You can see that whether or not these kids ever grow up to be what they say they hope to be, you can see they have a dream and a vision for their futures, which, given some of the statistics you would have heard earlier in the program, it's not a foregone conclusion. These kids would have a happy ending. But you can see this school is changing lives. So at this point, you start to kind of withdraw inward. Now it's 50 minutes into this program, 50 minutes. And you start to kind of pull inward and think, you know, if I was to ever consider giving money, this would be a good investment. Now, up steps what we call in our recipe the pitch person. The person whose job it is to ask for your money. Now, the pitch person is not selling anything or strong-arming anybody. You see, the program has done all the work. All the people who want to give are sitting there going, boy, this is exactly the kind of program I could support. Somebody just tell me how to do it. So, again, we teach you like how to find the right pitch person, and we give you the script for the pitch person. But here's the gist of what the pitch person says. The pitch person says, when we looked at what we wanted to ask you for here today, we decided just to tell you the truth and tell you what we need. We need operating money. In fact, we have a deficit at the school, so we need a lot of operating money. And we're launching something brand new today, our Unrestricted Operating Society, our multi-year giving society. If you've been inspired by the miracles that occur here every day, we ask you all today just to consider becoming founding members of our multi-year society. Then the pitch person says, and it's all in the script we give you, table captains, please pass out the pledge cards. You see, the pledge cards weren't sitting underneath your plate so you could fill them out early, thus conveniently escaping the program. You see, we think of every detail in this recipe. All right, so let me talk you through what it is that the pitch person is showing people in terms of their choices. So I'll pretend I'm the pitch person here. And the pitch person literally says, stay with me, everybody. Let me show you your choices here. You know, I'd rather have a piece of white paper. Hold on. I just want something plain because this is making a mark. All right, so the pitch person says, stay with me, everybody. Let me talk you through your choices. Let me give you a little background information about the school, says the pitch person. We have 600 students in our school, and our annual operating shortfall last year was $600,000. Remember I said there was a deficit? We decided just to tell people the truth, so we told them there's a deficit. So the pitch person says, you can see there's lots of ways you could help us. The first way you can help us is if you will give us $1,000 a year for 5 years. Now, this is going to help to make up some of this shortfall for the equivalent of one student. So we call it sponsor a student. But here's the thing. You don't get a student. This isn't one of those get a kid programs where they're going to send you cute little cards and letters. This is just an example of what your financial support can do. The first time this breakfast was ever held in Seattle, 115 people checked this box. Made a pledge of $5,000 at a first-time breakfast. Then the pitch person goes on and says, now, maybe there's some of you who want to help in a bigger way, and you're blessed that you can do that. So please consider, if that's you, give us $10,000 a year for 5 years. And this is going to help to sponsor 10 students. 8 more people did that. Mark that box. Then the third category, the pitch person said, now maybe some of you have you have your family foundation or a corporation, or you're just in a position to give more money. So if that's so, please consider giving $25,000 a year for 5 years. 4 more people check this box. Now I'm guessing some of you are sitting here thinking, I don't know where this woman lives. I don't know what planet she flew in from, but this is not going to work in our community. How many of you had that passing thought? At the 2-day training, we customize these, we call these units of service. At our 2-day training, we customize these using formulas based on your giving history. So your amounts may not be these. But I will tell you something. The lowest amount we have you ask for is $1,000 a year for 5 years. Now I know when you hear that, some of you are thinking, that's way too much money. But break it down. $1,000 a year is $83 a month. Think about it that way. I mean, for some people, that's like their Starbucks bill or their dry cleaning bill, and they'd much rather do something productive with that money than have a lot of caffeine. All right, so now the pitch person, after he talks through these units of service, these specific things, he says, those of you who've become founding members of our multi-year society, we sure thank you. And respecting everyone's financial differences, we know there's many of you who haven't yet told us how you'd like to help us, so the next category is for you. You tell us how much money you'd like to give and for how many years. A fill-in-the-blanks category, leaving the donor totally in the driver's seat, which is where you should leave him anyway. Some people wrote literally $10 and they crossed off the year. They wrote a $10 one-time check. Some people wrote $100 for 2 years. And the pitch person says, and it's in the script, whatever amount you can give, we totally appreciate. Then we had one more box. Now this was for the people who had to go home and talk to somebody else, or maybe they had stock or something. And this is, please contact me, I have other thoughts to share. Then there's a little wrap up at this Ask event, and then everybody literally is out the door. 60 minutes, they're out of there. Like going, this is a great event. We never believed you had us out of here, but they're out of there and they're happy. Well, then we were quite happy because then we opened the envelopes and started counting the money. And when we started counting the money, we were absolutely stunned because we realized that from less than 130 people, so it was 130 people who checked these boxes, 127 actually.
How many went?
127 people
Had attended.
No, 850 had attended, but I'm just talking about these three levels here. This is 127 people. From 127 people, when we counted up all the pledged money, we had just raised $1.5 million. Now that includes the pledges. So some of you are thinking, yeah, but that's pledged money. What's your collection rate? Our collection rate in this model is 95%. And I'll tell you why in a minute. It's no accident. There's a reason. But we realized from 130 people, remember I said we wanted to have 1,000 people at this event? We didn't. We had 850 people. There's some natural attrition formulas that now this has become so predictable now that we've done this for so many years. We teach you all the formulas. 130 people out of 850 is less than 15%. Right? I mean, from fewer than 15% of the people, we had just raised $1.5 million. And these are the kinds of percentages that will hold true if you decide to do this and follow the recipe. So you can imagine how excited we were when we counted this money, but we were also kind of curious because we wondered, what happened? Why did all these people do this? So here's what we did. The day after the event, literally, we got on the phone, we called all these multi-year people right here. We called everybody else later, but we wanted to talk to those people, and we called them, and we did, of course, the 5-step follow-up call. Thank you for coming to that event. Thank you for your incredible gift. What did you think? Then we were quiet and we listened, and it's a good thing we were, because almost verbatim, they all said the same thing. If I had known how good that event was going to be, if I had any idea how much money I was going to give or how moved I was going to be, I would have invited other people. They had specific names of people in mind. You all know this. When you feel a real connection to a mission, don't you want to share it with others? Not even because you want them to give. You're just proud of your connection. So here it is, literally. Picture this. It's the day after the event. We're on the phone with these people. They're naming all these names of people. We're madly writing them down. And then we wised up and we said to them, well, you know what? We kind of liked this event too. We're going to have it again next year, and would you, happy multi-year donor, now naming names of people, would you be willing to be a table captain at next year's event? And you have between now and next year to do the fourth and final step in our model, which is introduce others. Introduce others. Now, what could they introduce people to? What could they invite them to? A point of entry. You invite your friends that you're naming to the point of entry, or host one yourself in the office. We'll do a wonderful 1-hour informational session. We won't ask them for any money. We'll do the follow-up call. Now, if your friends are interested in becoming involved with our organization, we'll cultivate them and talk to them and give them whatever information they want. But if your friends are literally saying, don't bother me, I'm not interested in your mission, are we going to keep pestering them? No. What are we going to do? Remember this? Bless and release them. We're going to let them go. We're not going to put their name on our direct mailing list. We're not going to do any of that stuff. We're just going to release them and wish them well. Many of your multi-year donors from the first year become table captains the second year. So some of you are already figuring this out. There's a multiplier effect here. This allows you to build a base of multi-year donors because those table captains invite their friends who become multi-year donors. They invite their friends. Do you see how this all works? It starts to exponentially kind of spiral up, building you a base of multi-year donors so you know where to focus. All right. Let me go back and tell you, what are the 2 ingredients you must have whenever you ask for money? Remember that? 2 ingredients that you must have. Whether it's at this event, which you don't have to do, but some of you may be thinking, I kind of like that event, or if you ask one-on-one, you still have to have these ingredients. So the first thing you have to have is what we call units of service. Now, units of service are these boxes right here. These boxes at the top, 1, 2, 3 boxes, and you only have 3 in our model. Now, without those, people don't know what they're supposed to give. How many of you have been to a fundraising event where at some point somebody steps up and says, okay, everybody, time to give money, and I want you all to give from the bottom of your heart? Well, what does that mean? I mean, give generously. Well, what does that mean? You see, for some people who are sitting at this event who can really, they've got a big capacity to give, they don't want to feel like they're showing off. They don't want to feel like I'm the only person in the room writing a big check, so they hold back. Conversely, if I'm a person and I know I'm on a budget, I can just write my check for $10, I don't want to feel like it doesn't count for anything, so I don't write a check either. You see, without some sort of guidelines here, people don't know what they're supposed to do. Everybody holds back. Units of service give people some suggested levels. Now, are we saying that they have to give at these levels? No. We're just telling them, here's what we need. If you can give us that, we would sure appreciate it. People tell us they really like the fact that we're telling them what we need. It doesn't mean that they have to give at all. The second ingredient in every ask is you want to ask people to make a multi-year pledge. And in our model, it's 5 years. Now, this is not for the reason you're thinking. This is not for your accounting department to be all happy. Although they'll be pretty happy, but that's not what this is about. You see, when donors come to this event, odds are if I've been a donor to your organization for several years and you've taken good care of me, let's just assume that you've thanked me enough, you've been in touch with me, you've had all the right people call me, and if I come to this breakfast and I see that I could actually make a multi-year pledge, now I know I don't have to, I know because I see this other box down here, but I know in my mind I'd be giving to you anyway. So I'm thinking, I really would like to make a declaration that at least for 5 years, that mission of yours to give every child a safe future, that mission of yours to give every person on this planet a quality life and to end homelessness and hunger and provide quality education and a great family, that's my mission too. Sign me up. You see, they're telling you something when they make this kind of declaration. They're saying, I'm partnering with you for at least 5 years to accomplish something wonderful because I really believe in what you're doing. And let's just tell the truth. I mean, when somebody makes a 5-year pledge, it's a big deal. It is. So we want to honor their commitment with something that we call in our model a free feel-good cultivation event. A free feel-good cultivation event. And it happens right here. Now here's what this is. This is not another event that you have to create. This is something that you're already doing programmatically. That's mission focused, where if you were to stop for a minute and think about inviting your multi-year donors and allow them to bring others, they could be reconnected back to your mission. So if you have a volunteer recognition event, do any of you do that where you have volunteer recognition? That would be a great free feel good. Do any of you have a milestone event like a graduation or a recognition ceremony for some of your constituents or clients? That would be a great free feel good event. I mean, just think about it. If you're a multi-year donor and you come to something where people are standing up and talking about, for example, I got my GED. You've got a class of people who got their GEDs, and they're saying, now that I have my GED, here's my dreams for the future. Wouldn't that really reinforce in your mind why you're supporting that organization? Wouldn't you sit there and go, boy, I know I support them? You see, what a free feel-good cultivation event really is, in our model, it's a point of re-entry. Do you all see this? It's a point of re-entry, and just like at the point of entry, after the point of re-entry, we would be doing all the follow-up. We'd do the follow-up calls. Thank you for coming. What did you think? Remember I said before our collection rate is 95%. Do you see why? We don't just have this event and then invoice people and hope they'll stay with us, and then 6 years later hit them up again. No, I mean, that would be horrible. We have this event and we stay in touch with people. We deepen the relationship with people, which means if down the road you want to use this model for capital, you can. You can have a special free feel-good cultivation event just about capital or endowment. and invite the multi-year donors. And you know, people will give to more than one thing. There are some people who are able to give to many different things in an organization. So they will give to capital, they will give to endowment, they will give to major restricted gifts. So do you all see how this works? How it's just a system that really you build the relationship, and then you culture, and you take good care of, you cultivate the relationship. You keep sort of watering the tree, if you will, so the fruit is always growing. How many of you recognize things in this you're already doing? How many of you see that you're doing things? Good. Now what people typically tell us when they see this is they say, we're doing some of this, but you know where we're missing the boat is the follow-up. We're not doing the follow-up. And I have to tell you, the follow-up is really the glue that holds this whole thing together. If you're not going to do the follow-up, this is probably not a model for you. You've got to do the follow-up. The other thing that people usually are sort of thinking at this point in their minds is they're thinking, well, this is really nice, Lynda, but who's going to do all this work? I'm busy. I'm one person. How many of you are like one person and you do everything? That's how I was in my school. I was one person. I had a weird title, which meant I did everything. I wrote the grants. I typed the minutes from the board meeting. When the air conditioning broke, I was up on the roof with the AC guys. I talked to the lawn maintenance people. And I was also a testing psychometrist, so I tested the kids occasionally. I was sort of a busy person. And I did this too. So the thing is, you don't have to bite off the whole enchilada here. Start where you most need to be. My guess is, for some of you, where you should be starting is at points of entry. Start here. Tell your story in a powerful way in 1 hour. Bring people to you so they can get inspired by your work and they can help. So start with points of entry. Some of you should be starting with a very special follow-up strategy. How many of you already have donors? I'm assuming you have donors. Do any of you do direct mail? Okay, so here's direct mail is a great strategy into this model, because what you can do is take your direct mail list, all the people have been giving to you years after years, all those people, and they're sort of like zip codes and a name, you don't know them. Print it out, stratify it by dollar amount, and then start calling some of those people. Now, not all of them, but call a sampling of them and put together a group of, high-level kind of callers, and call those people and basically say, thank you for giving to us all these years. We've been a little remiss in calling you. It's been 15 years, but hey, we're calling you now. I mean, just tell the truth. People will forgive you. And then, if they're interested, you could invite them to come and see what you're actually doing. If they've been giving at a distance, it means they have some interest. So you could invite them to come to what? A point of entry. Invite them to come to the point of entry and get on the cycle with you. So you don't have to start with new, bigger, better, rich strangers. Start with your insiders. Invite your donors. Invite your board members to come see. Some of you, maybe, you're sitting on ripened fruit. You know that if you ask people, they would say, boy, it sure took you long enough. You should be asking before the fruit spoils or somebody else picks it up. But we'd like you to have your whole units of service and multi-year society all carefully thought through so you can leave it as a legacy. Some of you should be reconnecting back to donors who gave to you years ago, but now they sort of forget what you do. They sort of forgot about you. You should be starting with free feel-good events. Eventually, what happens here? If you really work this system, rather than this be the flat train track that I described at the beginning, this starts to spiral up so that you are having conversations with higher and higher donors about the next initiative, the next dream that you're spinning. And what this allows you to do is to leave a legacy of a self-sustaining, mission-focused, individual giving system. Do you all see how this could work for your organization? How many of you like this? Remember I said at the beginning I thought you might like it? How many of you see that you could do some parts or the whole thing here? Good, which is very good. Okay, so before I take questions, because I'm assuming you have some questions, let me talk you through some of the resources that we have available to you at Raising More Money. And let me just tell you what our mission is at Raising More Money is to provide long-term sustainable funding to train organizations so they have long-term sustainable funding for their missions. And to do that, we have a whole curriculum. I'm trying to find it. We have a whole curriculum of courses that we offer. And I'll just talk through them quickly, and then I'm going to talk to you about some of the free things that we have. We have a 5-year curriculum where organizations can be with us 5 years, because many organizations we work with, they want to build to an endowment, a fully funded endowment. That's how they define sustainable. So we have the first course in our curriculum is our 101 workshop. It's a 2-day training. You come with a team of 6 people, and I can help you sort out who would be on the team. With your team, you totally customize the model. We teach you every aspect of this. I mean, I make it look sort of simple here today, like it's a circle, how hard can it be? But there's parts of this that are counterintuitive, and they'll be sort of like speed bumps along the way. So we teach you every aspect of this. You leave the 2-day training with a plan and a timeline and your first of 3 one-hour coaching calls with your Raising More Money coach, somebody who's going to be on the phone with you, sort of holding your hand through the whole process. The cost for the training is $8,500 per team. Now, if you send 4 people, is it less? No, it's 4 very expensive people, so you should send 6 people. And that's this year's tuition. Next year it's going up. And the return on investment on average groups who attend that training raise $150,000 to $175,000 within the first 9 months, most of which is new money. Plus, they build their base of multi-year donors so they know where to focus, which is great. We offer the training in 3 ways. Regionally, we're all over the country doing regional workshops. Organizationally, so if there's a group of people from a similar organization, like I'm leaving Sunday to go train American Red Cross. We've got 20 American Red Cross chapters. I'm training all of them. And then we also do a community workshop where we're underwritten by a foundation who basically scholarships 20 nonprofits. And if they provide the scholarships, then we'll come wherever the community is and we'll train the nonprofits. So some of you may be interested in registering, which would be great, and come talk to me or write a little note on your card. But maybe some of you are thinking, well, this is great, but I got to get other people to see this. So we do introductory sessions. We do this session all over the country. We're always looking for organizations, nonprofits to host us. So if in your community you have a space, where there's like we could get 20 or 30 people, free parking and things like that, we'd love to come and do that, and we don't charge you to come do that in your nonprofit. We just ask that you open it up to the community at large. We do all the registration. Conferences, maybe some of you participate in conferences, and we're asked a lot to speak at conferences, and people seem to like this session. So if you know of a conference and you think you guys should speak at that conference, come see me and talk to me about it. Partnering, just if you know people we should be talking to, I'd love to talk to you. We have a pre-recorded online session. It's PowerPoint, and then we have all these great conference calls. So if that's all the money part of this. Now, let me talk to you about something free, our free electronic newsletter. Do any of you subscribe to it already? I'm just curious. No, great. You should all subscribe to it. It's totally free. It comes on your computer every 2 weeks. It's full of articles and tips and strategies about raising money from individuals. Plus, it's got interviews with many of our alumni who've been using this model, and they talk about how this worked for them. It's Terry Axelrod, our founder, writes the articles. It's really wonderful. So I would recommend everybody just check it out. And to do that, if you just write on your card that you want to get the e-news, then we'll subscribe you. Or you can sign up online is fine. Books and videos, I brought one set here. You can also order them online, so anybody who's listening, watching this, you can order this all online at our website. There's 3 books, 2 videos. The first book is our user's guide, sort of the Bible of raising more money, and the second book is about powerful points of entry, which you really have to have a great one so people will refer their friends. The third book is about the Ask event, how to do this whole Ask event. And then the video is basically what I did here today. It's our founder, Terry Axelrod, doing this. And then the last video is a great video to get your board all reignited and re-inspired about the passion of your mission. It's really great. So I brought a library set, and that's the best way to go because you get 3 books and 2 videos, or I have it in DVD. And it's $180. So if anybody's interested in the library, come see me because they usually go really fast. And we take credit cards and all that stuff. And then finally, last thing, data tracking, because I think you've heard me mention data tracking a bit. You've got to track data if you're going to adopt this model. And we have developed in partnership with eTapestry our own software that's web-based called Next Step. And it has the whole Raising More Money model built right into it, so you always know what you're supposed to be doing, and it allows you to not deviate from the recipe. So if you're interested in that, come see me and I'll give you information. There's also information on our website about this. Last thing, let me just point out on the back of your handout. This is a great document that just articulates, I think, in a really great way, what are the benefits of this approach. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but let me just say that I think this is a great system because it gives your organization a system for tapping into 84% of all the money that's coming to nonprofits from individuals. It focuses on fundraising as a science, not an art. It allows your organization to establish a multi-year unrestricted giving society. And here's the one I like the best. It's mission-based. It honors your donors' true commitment to your mission. In other words, they're giving because they really believe in what you're doing, and you're recognizing them because you really honor that commitment that they're making. So there it is, a system to build you lifelong donors who are giving to your organization because they really believe, and they're giving for all the right reasons. And there's a difference between a contribution and a donation. A donation is sort of like, I'll give you a donation so you'll go away. A contribution, you all know this, when you truly contribute, you feel great about it and want to do it for a lifetime. And that's what this is about. This is about true contribution. Okay, so how about some questions? You've all been very nice and didn't ask any questions, so let's take a few questions. Who's got a question? No questions?
You're speechless.
You're speechless. Yes, a question in the back.
If these walls could talk, is that then? I mean, that's not licensed
No,
phrase
it's
or
not.
anything?
It's
Okay.
not. And I'll tell you what they did. It was really interesting. They were Child Abuse Prevention Agency, and it was called If These Walls Could Talk. And what they did was, when they brought people in, they gave them some basic statistical information on the incidence of child abuse and the incidence of repeat child abusers, and all the sort of hard statistics that you all work with. And then what they did, they said, but we'd like for you to really hear the voices of the people whose lives were changing themselves. And what they had was, they had a little Sony tape recorder, just a little tape recorder, and they pressed the button, and they had, I think it was 20 seconds. It was an excerpt from a 911 call where the child the child was very young and was calling in a 911 call. And it wasn't even enough so you heard anything, but you just heard that something was going bad there. Something was clearly wrong. There was lots of crying. That's all they played. And then they said, we want you to hear this because this is the reason that we're doing the work that we do, so we don't have any more calls like this. That's why we're doing the work that we do. And you know what? It's hard work. And we can't get to every child who's on the other end of that phone. And that's what we want to do. It was really powerful. So it was a great way to do it. And they also had some silhouette pictures of kids, so they didn't show any faces at all, but they had some silhouette pictures. And that's where they had the police officer talking about when he went to a home on one of the calls. It was really amazing. He stood up at their Ask event, and he just had tears streaming down his eyes as he told the story. It was like a minute. It was really great. People have to get it. You really have to get your mission out there so people really understand what's going on in this world. I mean, most of us are like oblivious or we're in denial. So you really have to sort of hit people over the head so they get it.
If an organization could find this tuition someplace, because there's no way that we can just take it out of our operating costs. Like if we got a grant for it or something, you come to the organization and present this.
No, if you pay the $8,500 and then you would come to one of our regional workshops where we're in regions all over the country, so you'd pay travel as well. So here's where we are, and this is all on our website.
Oh.
So we're in different regions. We're all over the country doing this. So you'd come to the one that's the closest to you, wherever you are. Probably for most of you, because I think you're mostly California-based, correct? Las Vegas would be the closest one to come to. November 30th, December 1st.
Oh, so it's travel and everything on top of the $8,500.
Yeah, you pay travel on top.
You also said, though, you could sponsor one somehow if we had a place where you could hold it.
What I meant was I'll sponsor this 2-hour session. These are the 2-day trainings where you come and you learn the whole thing. From these 2-day trainings, you leave with a big workbook. It's got all the formulas and all sample scripts and everything, and it's all. So there's difference. There's a 2-hour. And there's the 2-day. But the 2-hour, we will come and do this for your organization as long as we can invite in some other people from your community. And we're happy to do that.
And how many people are in the 2-day sessions?
In the 2-day session, there's 20 organizations with 6 people each, so it's about 120, 125 people. It's a big workshop. There's a senior instructor. I'm the senior instructor at Raising More Money, and there's the coaches who are going to be your coach, who literally sit down with you at the table and go through all of your special scenarios. And that's the coach who's going to work with you for a year going forward. The coaching is really great because then you have somebody who's sort of, on one hand, holding you accountable to following the recipe, because you'd be amazed at how many people leave and start getting creative immediately. But the coaches really hold your feet to the fire in terms of, follow the recipe, and they answer all your questions. And they can really help you with some of the people in your organization who are not necessarily buying into this. Not that you would have any of those, but you might have a few. I had some in my organization. They didn't quite like it. Until I raised the first $500,000, then they really liked it. Then they thought it was pretty good. Are there questions? Yes.
Who are the 6 people that typically come from an
Okay,
organization?
good. Here's what we recommend. It's a cross-functional team. So we want you to bring executive director or senior staff person, bring somebody from the board, bring some staff people, and bring some program people, and you would think, why would they come to a fundraising training? But the program people and the staff people have the stories. They know the impact of your work. So we say, don't just bring staff, because if it's all staff driven, then the board won't buy in. And if you bring all board members, they'll get excited, but really, who's doing the work? Because they're board members, they're busy. So it's a cross-functional team, staff, board, volunteers. And if you're thinking, well, who would the volunteers be? Bring the volunteers who are what I call the roll-up-your-sleeves volunteers. You know who they are. They're the ones who always show up. You all know who your beloved volunteers are, the ones who are always there. You can always count on them. Bring them. Does that answer it for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Other questions? Yeah.
I'm very interested in statistics, and I'm wondering, do you track on your website statistics for every single person that goes through your program?
We don't, but we did have an issue in our e-news that gave the summary of 2004 data for our organizations. In fact, I have it. Let me tell you what it was. It was in 2004, we trained organizations who raised, from 254 organizations, they raised $38.2 million in 2004. Now that's this economy, that's with the war, that's with post 9/11, because a lot of people say, well, it just doesn't work anymore. And so far in 2005, in this last spring 2005, we've helped groups raise $14 million from 65 groups. So the numbers are going up. And you're probably a numbers person, so you can figure this out. It used to be on average they would raise about 150 to 165,000. It's up to, I think, 187,000 at these Ask events. That's what they're raising. Now, this is in markets all over the country, so it's not just in Seattle. This is in Wheeling, West Virginia, after the coal mine shut down. This is in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania. Do any of you know the Pocono Mountains? Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of money in the Pocono Mountains, except for skiers who are skiing by. So this is in all kinds of markets. And that's why we love this model, because it's really robust. It works everywhere. And we keep track. We don't post it on the website, but we do keep track. But we do an annual report on our e-news that summarizes the giving for that whole year and the breakdown.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
One thing. Is it important to have a development director for this? Because we're a very small program, and so we just... It takes time to, like you said, the follow-up and do all those things. And so, if it's just one of my tasks to do, I know it won't be,
Let me tell you what, she's asking, do you have to have a development director? It would be great if you do, but the reality is probably some of you don't, or some of you probably do development work as part of everything else that you do. It takes the equivalent of 20 hours a week to implement this model initially. 20 hours a week. Now, it doesn't have to be one person's 20 hours. It could be several collective 20 hours. But in my organization, I did all of this. I'll just tell you, I was a crazy person. I was really a crazy person the first year. But I did all of this because I saw this model and I knew it would work. I knew we'd raise a lot of money. So I was willing to be crazy for 1 year to get this going. And then, as soon as we raised the first $500,000, I went to the board and I said, do you like this? And they said, oh, yeah. And I said, well, do you want to keep doing this? And they said, oh, you bet. And I said, well, not with me. Because I'm like burning out here. I said, I need help. I need a computer. I did this whole thing with no computer. Mm-hmm. I had no computer. It was me and yellow stickies. So I said, I need a computer. I need an assistant. I need like a headset for my phone, because I was like cringing up my neck like this. And I had some leverage to ask them for those things because I'd raised money. Right. But in the beginning, it'll take you 20 hours a week to get this going.
And then after that?
It's one person per 200 to 250 donors that you're cultivating. One for 2 to 250. And a lot of it, I'll tell you what it depends on. It isn't on how great the person is who does the work. It depends on your data tracking system. If you have a good data tracking system, it really will free up almost the equivalent of a 3/4 time person with a good data tracking system, which is why we developed our own, because so many of our organizations that we trained all said, we can do the work, but how do we keep track of the data? It's killing us. So we developed our own. Does that answer it for you? Mm-hmm. Good. Yes, Jim?
I'm kind of curious to what degree people who made those multi-year pledges keep to their pledge.
It's 95%. 95%. It's a very small fall-off rate. Now, you've got to look at why. It's no accident. It's because we stay in touch with these people. In the old traditional model of fundraising, and I'm grossly generalizing here, but in the old model, what we do is we'd sort of pay a little attention to people, then we'd ask them for money, then we'd probably write them a thank you note or maybe a phone call, and then we'd ignore them till we'd hit them up again. That's not going to get you 95%. So if you do this and go back to the old way you used to take care of or not take care of donors, you won't have 95%. I tell you, the key to doing this is cultivation. Mm-hmm. It's really cultivation. And in 101, the whole focus of 101 is we teach you how to do points of entry and do the Ask event. We sort of seduce you into doing this by saying, here's something you like to do. You all like to do events, so do this event here. But then in 201, it's not about that at all. It's all about cultivation. That's what 201's about. How do you take care of people? How do you build a system? We show you how to use technology to build a system to take care of people. Because that's really how you keep the pledge money coming in. And you keep expanding the base, which is what you want to do. Make sense? Did you have a question?
It was if you quantified how much time it takes to implement this.
Yeah.
Anyway, it just answered that.
Good.
But do you know if you're going to be doing this anytime, next time you might be doing it in the Bay Area? Just out of curiosity.
An introductory
The
session?
Same thing.
No, but go on the website. It'll be listed there. And if you subscribe to our e-news, then you'll get notification of when we're coming to your area. So that's why another reason for you all to sign up for e-news. I mean, it's totally free, and if you want to unsubscribe, we don't pester you about it. We don't take it personally. But if you sign up, then you'll know when we're coming to your specific area. But I'm sure we are. We come here a lot. I mean, I'm up here a lot, especially in the summer when it's 1,000,000 degrees in Phoenix. I'm very happy to come up here.
Also, just to remind you that Lynda was kind enough to allow us to put this on our website, so you can watch a replay of this.
And also on our website is a whole PowerPoint presentation too. So there's like 2 great resources, yours and even on our website. So you can see it again. Have others watch it. Usually what happens is people get excited about this and then they say, I got to go back and sell my board. You know, this is like, how are they ever going to do this? So there's lots of resources available to be able to do that. Question?
How many people at that point of entry event? How many people do you invite to that?
The points of entry are typically 10 to 15 people. It's not very big. Now, they'll start small. I'll tell you, my first point of entry, I had one person, and it was my sister. I mean, who do you invite? Who do you hit up? You hit up your family. And she's my older sister, and she always gives me great advice. So she came. I did the whole thing with her, like for real. And then I called her afterwards, which was a little funny, but I did the whole follow-up call. And I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, you know, I finally got it about why you're such a nut about this school. See, I've been involved with this school since I was 19 years old, and as you can all tell, I'm way older than 19. So I've been with this little school for my whole life, basically. And my sister said, now I see why you love that place. And she said, it's a funny thing. She sits on a homeowners association board kind of thing. And she said, our homeowners association was going to adopt a charity. We didn't know who to pick. We picked your school. In came 15 more people. See, she brought them to the point of entry. If you start with one person and you have a fabulous point of entry, they will invite others. But I tell you, it's got to be great. It can't just be nice. It can't just be okay. It has to be sizzling. Here's your litmus test for your POE. If you have a good point of entry, people, when they leave your office or your place where you're having it, should be out in the parking lot on their cell phones, calling somebody in their world saying, do you have any idea what, X organization is doing? You have to come. You must come and learn what I just learned today. Then you know you've got a good one. So that's sort of your litmus, your goal to strive for, a good one like that. Yes?
Do you serve refreshments like cheese and wine or something at these
No,
things? Or you don't?
No, don't do refreshments. It's a distraction. It's really just a distraction. We always think that we have to distract people, that our missions aren't powerful enough for them just to come. Don't do that. Have people who are passionate invite their friends to come. Like, get your board, your board or your, volunteers who love you. Get them to invite their friends and literally say, you must come. I want you to come. You're going to come for an hour. It's not a fundraiser. You can trust me as your friend, and you're going to learn about an organization I love, and you better be there. They got to be a little militant about it. It's not about food. It's not about having a fancy office either. And even at the Ask event, the Ask event is not about the fancy floral decorations or the engraved invitations, none of that stuff. Really, the star of the show at the Ask event is your mission and your work. We really believe that the more people love your mission, the less you have to entertain them. Really, my entertainment is knowing that you're saving a life, that I don't need to come to another gala. I don't. More and more we're hearing from donors, do I have to go to yet another 3-hour gala? People don't want that. They really want to know you're taking my money and you're putting it into lives. That's where I want it to go. Yeah.
Yeah, one other question. How long would you say it takes, as you move around the circle? So obviously, if you were saying you want to get 100 of the really most passionate people, well, you're going to have several of these point of entries before you get to the Ask. So what kind of is the time frame?
We recommend you have one point of entry a month is the sane way to go. And if you have points of entry, one a month with 8 to 10 people at each point of entry, it's going to take you 6 to 9 months to build to a critical mass. But I'll tell you, here, let me give you another formula, because it's not just a linear thing. There's another formula that we actually teach you this at the workshop, but I'll tell you here. When you have your Ask event, you have to have at least 20% of the people who are sitting in the room at that Ask event who've been to your point of entry. That's that ripened fruit factor, 20% ripened fruit. Now, if you have more ripened fruit, you're going to raise a lot more money. So I'll give you my example. At my first Ask event, I only had 300 people. We raised $497,000. That's a lot. It's way double our formula. But the reason is I had way more than 20% ripened fruit. You see, I'm so old that my former students in Phoenix are now major business leaders. So when I had this Ask event, I knew I was sitting on all the kids, the former kids. And I just called them and I said, we're having a party and I want you to come and I want you to host a table. It's totally free and I want you to bring 10 of your friends. And they said, oh, we're there. So see, that's who was giving. It's the parents and the students and the grandparents. They were all giving. And I knew I was sitting on that. And some of you may be in a similar category. Like, well, some of you are thinking, we've got people that if we asked them, they'd give. So remember the 20% ripened fruit. That's what you got to have. And more is better. Does that answer it?
Yeah, that
Good.
answers it. Thank you.
Good. Anything else? Well, here's one for you that maybe you're thinking, but everybody's being too nice and you're not going to ask the question. So the question is, what if everybody in our city or our area or our region started doing this? Did anybody have that as a passing thought? Yeah, okay, good. So that's what we call the saturation issue. So here's my mean answer. My mean answer is, well, did we all stop doing the golf tournament and the gala and the silent auction because everybody else did it? No. But here's the real answer. The real answer is, this is not about an Ask event. It isn't. Some of you may sort of think it looks like that. This isn't about an Ask event. This is really about allowing people to come to your mission and choose freely if they want to be involved with you. And they can choose, they can come to the point of entry, they can say, I'm not the one, but I know 5 friends you should be talking to. This isn't about stealing each other's donors. It isn't. This is about really, instead of saying we're going to carve up the pie into smaller pieces so everybody gets less, this is about creating a bigger pie. Here's the reality. People will give to more than one organization. How many of you all give to more than one organization? Yeah, we all support more than one. This allows people a way to do it. So for example, you could come to an Ask event for one organization and you could be so inspired and you could say, oh, I'm going to make a multiple year pledge at $1,000 for 5 years. Then you go to another Ask event, breakfast or lunch, and you say, well, I like their mission, but I'm not quite ready to make that kind of a commitment, but I'm going to write them a one-time check for $100. Then you go to another breakfast or lunch and you say, well, this is really great, but it's just not my thing. But I know a bunch of people they should be talking to, so you refer other people. Donors tell us that they really like this. Donors tell us in cities like in Phoenix, where I'm from, there's almost 70 organizations now raising more money. In Minneapolis, we have over 120. And what the donors are saying, because we interview them, they say, we wish everybody did it like this. We really like it. We know if we go to that point of entry thing, I mean, they're starting to even use our language. If we go to one of those point of entry things, we know it's an hour. We know they're going to call us. And we know that if we say, don't bother me anymore, they're going to let us go. And we know if we go to that Ask event, it's free. We know it's 1 hour. We know we're going to get some nice food. We know we're going to be inspired. And we know we're going to be asked for money. And we know we don't feel pressured to give. They really like it. They say this has a lot of integrity to it. So this has become sort of the mission-focused fundraising, event that's happening everywhere. And the other interesting thing, because we've been tracking data, we're finding that in communities where a lot of organizations are doing this, the giving in the whole community is increasing. There's a whole article on our website if you're interested in numbers. It's very interesting. It's about the impact of doing this in Orlando, Florida. We have now done Raising More Money. We've done 4 workshops in Orlando, Florida. We've trained almost 80 organizations there. And the newspaper couldn't understand why giving was increasing to nonprofits. And they went in and they started researching it. And not only were the nonprofits who took Raising More Money getting more money, but all the other ones were too. You know the concept of when the tide comes in, all the boats rise? What we're doing here is creating a huge new generation of donors, and they start to influence others.
A culture of giving.
Exactly, the culture of giving, which we really love. I mean, I'm not kidding when I say our mission is really about training every nonprofit on the planet so they can have sustainable funding, which is a fairly daunting mission. But we're pretty committed to doing it. So, anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent. So I think we should, any more questions? I think we probably should stop. We have a few extra minutes. If you're interested in talking to me about hosting or about, if anybody wants the library, if you're interested in the workshop, please come see me. And thank you, everybody. Thanks, Jean, for hosting. John, thank you for having me here. I won't touch this.
Guess I'll sign off this event if I can borrow that mic again.
That's still on.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Lynda. That was great. It was a very interesting model. And I just wanted to say that, now that we've come at the end of our day and the end of the training event, I wanted to thank our audience here. I also want to thank our audience on the webcast. And I wanted to say that we certainly have appreciated the experience and various models and strategies of our 3 trainers today. And also the fact that I think that it's really leadership that is kind of the engine that pushes the whole idea of sustainability. So I thank you all very much for giving us your wisdom and your experience, the benefit of that. I hope that our group here has made some great contacts with each other. I hope that you're going home with some good ideas. And with that, I just want to say that I hope that you have an enduring success in your own communities with your own families and clients. And please, I want to put a plug in. This is the first time that we've tried to do this as a webcast, and we very much appreciate your comments and your feedback, and we take it to heart in planning our next event. So please do give us your feedback by fax or by email or any other technology that you care to share. I want to give a very special thank you to the Technology Educational Services at UC Berkeley, and also to Dave and George. Thank you very much. We couldn't have done this without you. I want to acknowledge my own staff, which I also couldn't have done it without them. They do a great job, and they keep us going. Also, our on-site audience, our audience in cyberspace, and our trainers. Thank you all very much. So long, we're signing off.
I'm off to get some coffee.
Jane turned it off.